My name is Emily Carter. I'm 43, living in the quiet suburb of Golden, Colorado, where neighbors mow their lawns every Saturday and nod good morning on their way to the mailbox. I run a small flower shop on Main Street, where the scent of roses is the only thing that still makes me feel alive. My husband, David Sullivan, is 52 and an insurance broker. He works long hours, comes home on time, and always sets the thermostat to my preferred 68 degrees. From the outside, we're the perfect couple tidy house. No arguments. A life so orderly, it could be a postcard. But beneath the surface, something's been wrong for a long time. Our marriage is like a movie you've seen too many times. You know every line, every scene, every pause. No surprises, no spark, just routine. We still eat dinner together, talking about the weather, utility bills, or the latest stock market news David skims on his phone. But it's all a facade. I can't recall the last time we truly embraced not the perfunctory hug before he leaves for work, but one where I could feel his heartbeat against mine. At night, lying side by side. It's just David's steady breathing and the glow of the bedside lamp I forgot to turn off. I tried to shake things up once, got a new haircut, wore a tighter dress, even tried cooking a fancy pot roast. But David barely noticed. He's not cruel, just too comfortable. Like an old recliner you sink into daily but never check for wear. Familiarity can kill desire. And I, a woman who once had dreams, who loved life's little joys, became a shadow in my own home. I stopped crying, stopped getting angry. I just existed. Some nights, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I disappeared tomorrow. Would anything in this house change? No one answered. And that's when I stopped feeling like a wife and became just the woman living next to her husband. We call each other husband and wife, but we don't live like it. Intimacy is rare, mechanical, like checking a box. No passion, no connection. Sometimes I'd turn away, not out of indifference, but because I was afraid to look into his eyes and see that I no longer existed there. I thought maybe all long-term couples end up like this. But deep down, I knew I was fading. Silently, unnoticed. Like a rose left in a vase too long without fresh water still upright. But lifeless. I thought I'd get used to it until our 16th anniversary. That's when David gave me a gift I could neither return nor forget. It was a chilly Friday evening in February. Snow blanketing Golden. I'd spent a long day at the flower shop, exhausted but satisfied after arranging a perfect bouquet of white roses for the occasion. David hadn't said much about our anniversary. I didn't expect much, maybe a quiet dinner, a bottle of Merlot, some reminiscing about old times. I even slipped into a sleek black dress I hadn't worn in years, a last-ditch effort to reclaim something for myself. But when I stepped into the living room, something felt off. Candles flickered on the coffee table. Soft jazz drifted from the Bluetooth speaker. The air carried the scent of burning cedar and something richer like unfamiliar cologne mixed with an emotion I couldn't name. Then I saw them. 2 men sat across from David, dressed sharply, their presence commanding yet reserved. David sipped bourbon, his face eerily calm. He stood, walked over, kissed my cheek, and said softly, "Happy anniversary." I was stunned. For a moment, I couldn't process it. No one explained. But something in David's eyes told me he'd planned this carefully, deliberately. He introduced them as Ryan Mitchell and Jacob Ellis, old friends. I'd never heard their names before. David poured me a glass of wine. He settled into the armchair across from our king-sized bed, silent, like a director watching his own play unfold. I stood frozen. Half of me wanted to bolt, the other half couldn't move. Then Ryan stepped forward. He didn't rush. His hand grazed my waist, his voice low and smooth as velvet. "You're beautiful." My skin prickled. Jacob took my hand. His touch was gentle, almost questioning, as if asking, "Is this what you want?" I could have said no. I could have pulled away, stormed out, demanded answers from David. But I didn't. Not because I didn't know it was wrong, but because I wasn't sure I cared about being right anymore. After years of silence, I'd forgotten what it felt like to be desired. Forgotten how a glance, a whisper, could ignite something alive. In that moment, I felt it again, not as a wife, but as a woman who'd been ignored too long. I glanced at David. He didn't move, didn't stop me, didn't speak. He just sat there, as if this was all part of his script, and I realized this was his gift to me, a strange gift, a dangerous chance, an invitation to cross a line I never thought I'd dare. I stepped forward. The wineglass was still warm in my hand. My legs trembled not from the cold, but because I knew nothing would be the same after tonight. I still remember Ryan's hand on my shoulder, light enough to stir me, firm enough to hold me there. Jacob stood close, his gaze patient. Neither pushed. But their restraint overwhelmed me. I'd always thought if I faced a moment like this, my morals would scream at me to run. I'd confront David, slam doors, shut it all down. But when it happened, I stood still, not out of weakness, but because I no longer knew what was right. Ryan kissed my neck, slow and deliberate. A shiver ran through me, not from cold, but from being seen. Not as a wife, not as a shadow at the dinner table, but as a woman with a body, desires, worth. Jacob held me from the front. His touch was so tender it nearly broke me. Maybe because it had been so long since anyone touched me without obligation. In that moment, I didn't think of David. Didn't think of consequences. Only instinct took over. I wasn't the Emily everyone knew, the proper woman with measured steps and polite words. I became someone else, free, alive, raw. I heard David's faint breath from the corner. No interference. He watched with an unfamiliar look. Not anger, not coldness, but like he was seeing a scene he'd imagined 100 times come to life. Time blurred. All I recall are synchronized touches, hands exploring me like uncharted land. Every sense flared, every boundary faded. When I collapsed on the bed, exhausted, hair tangled, lips still warm, David approached. He leaned down, kissed my forehead. "You were incredible," he said, soft as a good night. Then he walked away, as if nothing had happened. I wanted to speak, to ask why, but no words came. Because I knew the moment I stepped across that threshold in silence, I'd made my choice. That night didn't end like any other, and I wasn't the same woman anymore. The next morning, in the bathroom, steam curling around me, I saw myself in the mirror. A faint red mark on my neck, dishevelled hair, eyes I didn't recognize. I'd crossed a line, once. But sometimes once is enough to change everything. I stepped out, wrapped in my old silk robe. The house was quiet as ever, coffee brewing, birds chirping outside, David flipping through the newspaper like nothing had happened. But I had changed. My thighs ached faintly. The mark on my neck lingered. Scratches whispered of the night before. I tried to act normal, pouring Kellogg's cornflakes like always, telling myself I could pretend. Then I turned and saw her. Lily, David's daughter from his first marriage. 18. She'd been staying with us since winter break. She stood in the hallway, coffee mug in hand, arms crossed, silent, not frowning, just watching. Her gaze wasn't mere curiosity. It was deeper, sharper, like she'd heard something, seen something, or knew more than I thought. I shivered, stepped back. Chilly morning. I stammered, trying to break the tension. She didn't reply, just sipped her coffee and turned away, light as a ghost. But I knew she'd seen enough to unsettle everything. All day. No one spoke of it. David worked in his home office. I cleaned, folded laundry, tended to the orchids on the porch. But the house felt different, a subtle strain only I noticed. That afternoon, while folding towels in the living room, Lily stood by the window, sunlight framing her face. She turned, her voice barely a whisper. "Those men last night, were they here for you, Mother?" I froze. No words came. The towel slipped from my hands. I couldn't meet her eyes. But she pressed on. "I heard everything. These walls aren't as soundproof as you think." Her voice wasn't angry, not mocking. It was strange, hurt, yet curious. My mind went blank. "You sounded like someone else," she said, studying me, like a woman set free. I met her gaze young, but piercingly sharp. In that moment, I felt exposed. No role to hide behind. Not mother, not wife, not homemaker, just a woman who'd done the unthinkable. Lily sat beside me. Her knee brushed mine. That simple touch scared me more than her words. I thought I'd locked that night away, but it was never truly shut. And in the dark, another pair of eyes had watched. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, images flooded back David's gaze, heated skin, whispers at my neck. And now Lily's mirror-like stare. I hid in my office, pretending to sort old bills, avoiding her. I thought if I stayed quiet long enough, it would all fade. But near midnight I heard soft footsteps. I cracked the door open and froze. Lily was in our bedroom, not snooping, not misbehaving, just standing before the large mirror, holding the perfume I spritz on my neck each morning, the one David once called sexy without trying. She sprayed her wrist, closed her eyes, her face softening in the lamplight. When she opened them and saw me in the mirror, she didn't flinch. She held my gaze, silent. No words were needed, I understood. Something in her look chilled me. Passing of the torch. Not just a daughter's curiosity, but an appraisal, a comparison, a challenge. Just curious, she said, her voice a breath. I wondered what it feels like to be the center of it all. I had no response. She set the perfume down, brushed past me, her shoulder grazing mine. Light but lingering, sending a chill down my spine. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling, heart unsteady. I'd opened a door I thought was mine alone, but Lily was standing at its threshold, and what scared me wasn't what she knew, but what she felt. The next day, with David at work, I tried to act normal, but Lily didn't. Her clothes changed bolder, more deliberate, her gaze heavier. I caught her wearing my silk robe, the one from that night. She stood in the hallway, sunlight glinting off her smooth skin, hair loose. When she saw me, she didn't shy away. She smiled faintly, as if asking, "Who's next?" I swallowed hard. I couldn't scold her, couldn't advise her. Deep down, I knew I'd left a mark not just on the sheets, but in the mind of a girl discovering herself. I thought I was hiding a secret, but I'd planted it, and now I watched it grow not in me, but in her. That Friday, David left for a business trip, leaving a detailed schedule on the fridge and a scribbled note. "Don't stay up late." I nodded to no one. He didn't know I'd been up late every night. Not for the reasons he might guess. I avoided Lily all evening, locking myself in my office with a book I couldn't read. I heard dishes clink in the kitchen, old jazz from the living room speaker sounds that should have been harmless but stirred unease. Around 9, the front door opened. A low laugh. Men's footsteps. I held my breath. A friend of Lily's, a neighbour, but when I peeked down the hallway my body went cold. It was them, Ryan and Jacob. Their familiar figures moved with calm confidence, as if they belonged here, as if they'd been invited. And greeting them at the door was Lily. She wore a burgundy silk dress, hair pinned up, a few strands framing her face, red lipstick, a half smile. No trace of an 18-year-old's hesitation. She poured wine, chatted, rested a hand on Ryan's shoulder like she'd done it before. Every gesture, every glance mirrored me from nights ago. I stood in the shadows, unable to move. I wanted to scream, to pull her away from the edge I'd fallen over. But I couldn't, because I'd opened that door. She'd just walked through. Ryan tucked a strand of her hair back, whispering something that made her laugh softly. Jacob sat in the armchair, David's armchair. The scene replayed, but with a new lead. I was no longer the centre. I was the audience, watching the life I'd set in motion. Lily glanced toward the hallway where I hid. She knew I was there. Her eyes met mine, not startled, not hiding, inviting me to watch. I retreated to the bathroom, locked the door, and sank to the cold floor. Hands shaking, heart pounding. I thought I could control it, that it was a one-time thing, that I could tuck the memory away. But I'd passed it on. When I emerged near midnight, the house was silent. The wineglass was still warm. Lily's door was shut. I didn't ask. No one spoke, but I knew. I hadn't just lost the old me. I'd watched a newer, bolder version walk the path I'd left behind. The next morning, David returned. No suitcase, no flowers, no familiar smile or perfunctory hug. Just an envelope on the kitchen table, where we'd shared countless Saturday coffees. I approached, legs unsteady, still in my thin robe, face bare. David didn't look at me. He tapped the table, pointed to the envelope, and said nothing. I opened it. Inside were grainy colour photos, clear enough to see everything. Me on our anniversary, with Ryan, with Jacob, candlelight on my skin, eyes closed, hands clutching the sheets. Below, newer photos, same room, same men. But this time, Lily, I couldn't breathe. My hand froze mid-air. "You installed a camera?" I asked, my voice unrecognisable. David said nothing. After a moment, he stood, grabbed his coat, his car keys. I waited for anger, disappointment, an end. Instead, he said quietly, "I've seen enough." The door closed behind him, softly, finally. I stood in the kitchen, coffee still warm, the air sucked out of the room. I didn't cry. Tears lodged behind my eyes, unable to fall or fade, able to fall or... That afternoon, I don't recall what I did. Time dissolved. Only emptiness spread through my fingers. That evening, Lily passed me. She wore a long sweater, hair neatly tied, eyes calm, She sat on the couch, as if nothing had happened. I sat across from her. No more hiding. She didn't apologize. I didn't reprimand. A silent truth lay between us, undeniable. I didn't just lose David. I didn't just lose a 16-year marriage. I lost the Emily Lily once saw. I lost the right to guide her. I lost the moral ground I thought I'd hold forever. But what scared me most was not knowing if I wanted it back. I'd lit the spark, and now the fire consumed everything I'd held dear. That night, alone in bed, no warmth, no familiar footsteps in the hall. I stared at the ceiling, asking, who am I after all this? The worst part was I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. The days that followed blurred into a thick haze. I lost track of days. Life went on: breakfast, cleaning, tending roses at the shop. But inside everything had rotted. David didn't return. His side of the bed stayed empty, his closet half bare. No texts, no calls, just a void where he'd been. I once thought the worst silence was the coldness of our marriage. But the silence of being left behind, it melts you from within. Lily stayed in the house, still polite, still calling me Emily. But her warmth was gone, replaced by a quiet control. She didn't need my words anymore. She knew everything. Her style shifted, bolder, sharper. One evening, I saw her in my silk robe, the one that started it all. I opened my mouth to speak, but stopped. I had no right to question anyone anymore. She passed me slowly, her gaze lingering, a wordless challenge. I was no longer her mother, just the woman who'd gone before, now sidelined, watching history repeat in a new form. What had I created? A legacy of instinct, a curse of freedom no one truly wanted. I thought I'd acted to feel alive again. But what is living, if it cost you others, and yourself? The final night, when pretending became too heavy, I wrote a note, not an apology, not an explanation, just one line. Not everyone can walk through fire without burning. I left it on the kitchen table, where David used to sip his coffee. Then I walked out. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. I didn't know either. Some fires don't need a match to burn. Just a glance, a ripple, a whisper. I'd been the one to light it. Now I carried the ashes. And Lily, she stood where I once did. Eyes wider, steps steadier. Maybe she'd surpass me. Maybe she'd fall harder. But what scared me most wasn't what had happened. It was the tiny part of me that wanted to know, what would she feel? Crossing to the other side,